Every Pokemon has at least one ability, but sometimes Game Freak wastes an ability on a particular Pokemon. But I'm not talking about abilities which are meant to be bad like Truant. I'm talking about abilities which have bad synergy with the Pokemon. Some prime examples are Rotom Fan with Levitate and Stunfisk with Limber. But let's be honest, that's low-hanging fruit that everyone knows about, so I'm not going to go after them. The ones I'm going to talk about aren't as heinous as Rotom Fan and Stunfisk, but they just don't pair well together, so the Pokemon can't bring the true potential out of this ability. Now, I'm sure you can find some really niche situations where these abilities could be useful for that Pokemon, but overall, they're on here because of bad synergy or because the Pokemon has another ability which does just about the same thing and it's vastly superior. This isn't in any particular order, and I'm not listing every Pokemon that has an ability wasted on it. This is just a few of them that came to my mind, so I'm sure there's more. If you enjoy videos like this, then please be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Now let's hop right into it. First up, we got Toxapex. Toxapex isn't exactly known for its stellar attacking stats. In fact, its attacking stats are pretty low, and the only thing it excels in is defense and special defense. Be that as it may, Toxapex is an insanely good Pokemon, and it has an insanely good ability, Regenerator. But Toxapex also has a signature ability called Merciless. This ability makes all of the user's attacks result in a critical hit if the target is poisoned. We all know the value of critical hits. If you get a crit, it's the greatest thing ever. But if you get critted, it's your worst nightmare. So Toxapex being able to land a critical hit every time it uses a poison type move is not hard for it to achieve. It can use Toxic to poison you, which will never miss because Toxic will always land if used by a poison type. Toxapex can also poison Pokemon with its signature move, Baneful Bunker. If hit by a contact move when using this move, not only does it bypass nearly every attack, but the attacker will end up poisoned if the target used a contact move. Let's not forget Toxapex can also use Toxic Spikes to set some hazards, which will poison the target upon entry. And if all else fails, then it can resort to spamming Sludge Bomb or Poison Jab in hopes of poisoning the opponent. It's like it's almost inevitable that a Pokemon is going to get poisoned while Toxapex is on the field. So why is it on this list? Well, it's like I said earlier, because Toxapex attack and special attack are abysmal. Sure, it can land critical hits once a Pokemon is poisoned, but who cares about critical hits when it has a base attack stat of 63 and base special attack of 53? This ability would be terrifying on any poison type with at least competent attacking stats. Salazzle and Gengar would love to have this ability, but it's limited only to the Toxapex line. But what makes this ability truly useless is the fact Toxapex almost always runs Regenerator. This ability will restore a third of its health every time it switches out and back into battle. Toxapex excels as a stall Pokemon, so this ability is certainly far better for it. Why would you ever consider running Merciless, an offensive-based ability, on a defensive Pokemon when that Pokemon can just use Regenerator instead? Next up, we've got another Pokemon from Generation 7 with a signature ability, and that's Palossand. Now, I'm willing to be a little more lenient on Palossand because it actually runs its signature ability more than it does its hidden ability. It's got Sand Veil as its hidden ability, so it's more likely that you're not going to see this ability unless Palossand is used on a sand team. But its main ability is the one I want to talk about, Water Compaction. This ability will raise its defense by 2 stages when hit by a water type attack. That's actually a pretty good ability, but because Palossand is a ground type means it's going to have to take a super effective hit before this ability can activate. Despite its bulk, that's still going to hurt, and the only type of water type attacks it might not mind getting hit by are physical attacks like Waterfall and Liquidation. Since those are physical attacks which target its defense, therefore, when it gets a +2 to its defense, it might be able to survive the next one. But if it's getting hit by Scald or Surf, then this ability is not that useful. Sure, Palossand knows Shore Up, which heals half of its health, but because Palossand is so slow, there is a huge possibility it's going to get outsped, so it won't have the chance to heal itself. Palossand with Water Compaction isn't that bad in Generation 9 because every Pokemon can change their type. Therefore, Palossand can easily change its Terra type to a type which takes neutral or resisted damage from water type moves. Thus, it can make actual use of its ability. But I'm still putting it on this list because who knows if terrestrialization is going to stick around. It looks like it's going to remain in Pokemon Champions, but more than likely, it's not going to stick around for Generation 10, and it's going to go back to having bad synergy. If this is going to remain exclusive to the Palossand line, then what I think it needs is a major overhaul in how it functions. And look, Game Freak has definitely revisited abilities in the past and made them better. Take Inner Focus, for example. Back in the day, it only protected a Pokemon from being flinched. But now, Inner Focus also makes it so that Pokemon is immune to Intimidate, which is huge. Or how about Lightning Rod? Originally, all it did was redirect electric type attacks to the user. But now, not only does it redirect electric type attacks, it also gives them an immunity to electric type attacks and boosts their special attack by 1 stage. So here is what I propose. Water compaction should give the user an immunity to water type attacks and raise the user's defense by 2 stages when hit by a water type move. That way, instead of getting punished for being weak to water, you completely flip the script and Palossand no longer has a need to fear water type attacks. Now, I get it. On paper, that might sound too good. Water is one of the best types of the game, but look, we're talking about Palossand here. This isn't some overpowered, uber-tiered monster. Even if it did get that immunity, it's still weak to grass, ice, dark, and ghost, all of which are common types it would frequently encounter, and it's still really slow. I genuinely do like this ability, and I can see it having some major potential if it was given to a relatively bulky Pokemon that resists water like Blastoise or maybe even Tangrowth. I think they would just be better users of it. Now, the next spot on this list is going to be Darmanitan with its ability Zen Mode. I'm going to exempt Galarian Darmanitan because it can actually make some great usage of Zen Mode, but the standard Darmanitan was really screwed over with this ability. Zen Mode changes Darmanitan to its Zen Mode once its health falls below 50%, and once it's in its Zen Mode, it becomes a Fire Psychic type. But my main beef with Zen Mode is that this ability forces Darmanitan to do a complete 180 in its playstyle. Darmanitan is a moderately fast, hard-hitting physical attacker, while its Zen Mode is a slower but tankier special attacker. Darmanitan has base 95 speed and base 140 attack. Its special attack is base 30, which is lower than a lot of first stage evolutions. So if you let Darmanitan use Flamethrower, then this is going to have as much of an impact as a feather hitting the ground. But once it enters its Zen Mode, then its physical attack and special attack swap. So now its special attack is base 140 and its physical attack is base 30. If you want to use Zen Mode, then you need to run a special attacking Darmanitan, and you wait for it to fall below 50% of its health so that it enters its Zen Mode. But it just requires way too much maintenance to make this thing work. You have to keep it below half of its health, and because it's not that fast, it's typically going to move second, therefore it can only work in a Trick Room team. But if you can pull this off and make this thing an actual threat, then I applaud you. But what's the point of giving yourself a headache with Zen Mode when you could just run Sheer Force? You don't have to jump through so many hoops, and it gets a 30% boost to its moves which have secondary effects. It's more powerful, and it doesn't have to worry about becoming a drastically different Pokemon once it loses half of its health. Why spend all of this effort to use Zen Mode when it's now weak to Ghost and Dark, slower, and while tankier, it must be below half of its health. Therefore, it's frequently going to move second, so even with that added bulk, it doesn't really mean that much at the end of the day. The reason Galarian Darmanitan works, but not the standard form, is because Zen Mode Galarian Darmanitan doesn't become tankier. It becomes more frail, but faster, and hits harder compared to its regular form. Standard form Zen Mode requires too much maintenance with a little payoff, so do yourself a favor and use Sheer Force instead. For the Drifblim line, I wouldn't say their signature ability is anywhere near as bad as Zen Mode Darmanitan. Drifblim has the signature ability Flare Boost, which I think is okay. This ability will boost the user's special attack once they are burned. So it's kind of like Guts, but you must specifically be burned in order to activate this ability, and it's going to raise the special attack instead of its attack. Guts is a pretty good ability, so how is it that this ability, which is adjacent to Guts, on this list? Let's take a look at some of the strongest users of Guts. Ursaluna, Heracross, and Conkeldurr, just to name a few. The one thing that all of these Pokemon have in common is that their base attack is 120 or higher. That extra boost in power makes them far more terrifying, where a lot of Pokemon are afraid to get hit by them once they have Guts activated. Now compare their base attack to Drifblim's base special attack, which is base 90. 90 isn't horrible, but it's 30 points less than those users of Guts. Yeah, it's got to get a boost to its special attack, but it's not going to pack a punch compared to those excellent Guts users. It's not just that threatening, so a lot of Pokemon can just brush it off. But that's just one of my minor points. The main reason why this ability is on this list is because Drifblim has two other abilities which are far better. Aftermath will deal damage to the target if the target knocked out Drifblim with a contact move, as well as Unburden. Unburden will double its speed when it loses its held item. Knockoff is one of the greatest moves there is because it makes the target to lose their held item. Drifblim is going to get hit for super effective damage by this move, but if it can withstand it, then it's going to get that speed boost. But even then, there are far better strategies to make it lose its held item. It can hold one of the seed items which raise a specific stat depending on which terrain is set, or it can hold a berry since those are consumed, which will also activate Unburden. Drifblim can set up Calm Mind to raise its special attack and special defense, Strength Sap to lower the target's attack, while also healing itself in the process, and then you can slap on some attacking moves like Thunderbolt, Shadow Ball, or Air Slash. And Drifblim can hold a Citrus Berry, that way once it falls below half of its health, it'll eat the berry, heal up, and suddenly Unburden doubles its speed. Now, Drifblim becomes fast, surprisingly has good bulk thanks to Calm Mind to boost it on the special side, and Strength Sap to handicap physical attackers. And Drifblim's got some massive base HP of 150. Compare Unburden to Flare Boost now. The only thing Flare Boost has going for it is that you can give Drifblim a Flame Orb, and it'll get that special attack boost at the end of the turn. So unlike Unburden, it can reach +2 at the end of the turn. But the payoff isn't worth it when you can just use Unburden. Sure, Flare Boost lets it hit a little harder quicker, but it's also burned, so it's going to take some chip damage. I mean, let's be honest, that chip damage isn't too bad, but I'd much rather have Unburden because doubling its speed is what makes this strategy possible. Without Unburden, it's going to get outsped, and therefore making all that setup pointless. And that's why Flare Boost ends up on this list. It could have been amazing if it was slapped on a Pokemon with actual special attacking firepower, but on Drifblim, which already has Unburden, it's just a wasted potential. And finally, Metagross is known for having the ability Clear Body. Clear Body is actually a pretty good ability because it prevents the user's stats from being lowered by another Pokemon. So it's unaffected by Intimidate, and it won't have its speed lowered because of Sticky Web. Metagross can use Agility to raise its speed by 2 stages, and if it's holding a weakness policy and it gets hit by a super effective attack, its attack and special attack will be raised by 2 stages. So in one turn, Metagross can boost its speed and attacking stats and sweep the opponent without fear of having its stats lowered. That's pretty good. So how does its second ability stack up to Clear Body? Well, it has Light Metal as its hidden ability. Only a few select Pokemon have this ability, and they're all Steel type. I'd say none of them really care too much about running Light Metal, but the one who absolutely would not want to run this ability 99% of the time is Metagross. You see, all Light Metal does is half a Pokemon's weight. Weight really isn't that important in battling because there are only a handful of moves which are affected based on a Pokemon's weight. For example, Grass Knot's power is calculated based on the target's weight. The heavier the target, the more powerful this move becomes. But since only Steel types have this ability and they resist Grass, they don't really have to worry about Grass Knot. The only reason you would want to run Light Metal is because you don't want your Pokemon to get hit by Low Kick. Low Kick is just the fighting type variant of Grass Knot, and since a lot of Steel type Pokemon lean on the heavier side, then they typically fear this move. So I can see why Duraludon would want to run Light Metal, that way it's going to receive less damage from Low Kick. But it's completely useless on Metagross because Metagross weighs over 1,200 pounds. So when it has the ability Light Metal, it only weighs 600 pounds. But the problem is that Low Kick's power caps out at 120 when the target weighs 200 pounds or more. Therefore, it doesn't matter if Metagross is running Clear Body or Light Metal. It's always going to take the maximum amount of damage from this move. If anything, it's worse to make it lighter because Heat Crash is a Fire-type move, which hits Steel types for super effective damage. Heat Crash's power is calculated based on the heavier the attacker is than the target. So at the end of the day, Metagross is not going to get a reduction in power from moves like Low Kick, and all Light Metal accomplishes for Metagross is allowing Pokemon with Heat Crash to hit it harder. Oh yeah, Metagross can also learn Heavy Slam, which is the Steel type variant of Heat Crash. Heavy Slam is one of its best Steel-type moves because Metagross is so heavy. Halving its weight really kind of defeats the purpose of it running Heavy Slam, so I think it's best to steer clear from this ability. Giving Metagross Light Metal is a huge disservice, and it truly is a wasted ability that a Pokemon would almost never want to run. But anyways, that's going to do it for the video. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, then let me know what you think. I would appreciate it if you subscribed, but I'll catch you in the next one. Later.